Hi, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of some of the research that I've been doing on the proposed salmon farm on Loch Long. I'll try and rattle through it as quickly as possible. I have tried to take a professional approach to the research that I've done, but I do have my own personal view on this. So salmon farming is a large export product Scottish salmon is a large export product, second only to whisky in terms of food and drink exports for Scotland. And there are 200 salmon farms in Scotland, and Scottish salmon does travel the world, unfortunately no longer under its own steam. It doesn't migrate any longer. It travels around the world on aeroplanes to China, USA and France, where there are our largest markets. Now, the farm that's being proposed on Loch Long is a little different to other farms in Scotland, which are all what's called open net. The farm on Loch Long will be the largest fish farm in Scotland if it gets approved, and it's using a new technology which is called semi-closed. Just a few words about what that means here on beautiful Loch Long. So traditional fish farms are open nets where there's the water flows freely between the fish enclosed in the net and the marine environment. On Loch Long, it'll look exactly the same. If it does go ahead, it'll look exactly the same on the surface, but below the surface, the net will be enclosed in essentially a big plastic bag, as you see, and it funnels down to a collection point at the bottom, which collects all the solid waste. So the company has been working pretty hard to engage with the communities around Loch Long to try and discuss this with them and get them on board. And the community council has raised a number of issues, which, to be fair, the Loch Long Salmon Company has responded very comprehensively, and they've addressed a lot of the points we raised. There are still some significant concerns, however, which, in my opinion, haven't been addressed by the responses that they've given to us. I'm going to go quickly as I can through some of these points because I don't want to rattle on too long. Pollution, first of all. So the semi-closed method does quite successfully capture solid waste. As you saw on the diagram, it funnels there's a funnel shape which collects all the solid waste at the bottom, and by solid waste I'm talking about fish feces and excess feed that the fish haven't eaten. Now that collects at the bottom of the tank, and this company is proposing to remove 80 to 85% of that solid waste from the tank, which sounds great. So that won't go into the marine environment as it would normally do. Sounds great. Can they do it? We don't know. It's not been done anywhere else in the world. Other semi-closed systems exist in the world, but nobody is removing the waste in the way that this company is telling us that they're going to be able to do. So we'll see. Solid waste does make up quite a large component of the what's produced by fish, but also there's dissolved waste. So a lot of the excretion from fish comes through their gills by way of kind of urine. And none of the liquid waste, the dissolved waste, is going to be removed from the tank. That will be flushed into the loch as it would with any traditional open net fish farm. So that will mean that nitrogen and phosphorus will be washed into Loch Long with the dissolved waste associated with this fish farm, bringing with it complications such as algal blooms. It's very likely that there'll be a proliferation of algal blooms and increased quantities of jellyfish and other problems associated with this increased levels of nitrogen and phosphorus in the loch water. Pests and diseases. Now, this is a real win for semi-closed systems. It's kind of the real reason why these are being put forward is because they do very successfully address the problems of sea lice. So with a semi-closed system, the water is fed into the tank from below the level at which sea lice exist in the water, and so the fish are swimming in an environment where sea lice are not present. It's a real win, as I say. So that's great for the health of the fish and the quality of the end product. However, it's not the only disease that farmed salmon suffer with. On this chart, you'll see a whole list of other conditions that farmed salmon suffer with, and for that reason there will still be the requirement for the fish to be treated with with lots of chemicals. Those chemicals, they'll be in liquid form mostly, and certainly they'll end up in liquid form, and they will, they'll end up in the marine environment as they would with a traditional farm. So that is not an advantage for this system at all. Impacts in terms of wild salmon and escapes. I think it's yet to be known. Certainly it's a concern with any type of fish farm. The possibility of escapes if there's a big storm, for instance. We've seen multiple examples of that. I guess we don't know at this point. We don't know. We just don't know whether there will be a problem here. A few words about animal welfare. Fish are sentient creatures. They feel pain, they feel fear, they feel anxiety, they feel stress. When they're farmed, obviously they're restricted in that they're not able to migrate as they would normally do. As you can see, the normal migratory pattern of salmon from Scotland covers a huge area, and with farmed salmon, obviously they're contained within a tank. They're not allowed to migrate. They're kept in a very, very high density tank. And this particular farm, in order to recover the costs associated with this new approach, they're going to be doubling the density of fish in the tank. Yeah, not great. It's on the surface you can't see it, but this really is battery farming. They don't like it when you say that, but this is battery farming of sentient creatures. In terms of the impact on wild mammals, the argument goes that because the seals that would typically predate on farmed salmon, they can't see the salmon because of this barrier between around the outside of the tank. That should stop the predation. Maybe that's true. Experts I've spoken to tell me that seals hunt by sight, certainly, but they also hunt by smell. Will they be able to smell these vast tanks full of many thousands of fish? I guess they will. We'll see. In terms of what they're being fed, they are, there's been a huge problem with salmon farming in that it's been said that it's very unsustainable because traditionally it's taken up to 3 kilos of wild fish to produce 1 kilo of farmed fish in terms of the feed. Now the industry has woken up to that, and they are migrating the diet of the farmed salmon away from a reliance totally on wild fish, and they're now introducing a vegetarian diet to the farmed salmon, and that's based on soy, which of course brings with it its own problems of accelerating deforestation, and we don't need to go into that here. Microplastics, few words on microplastics. Loch Long is one of the most the biggest problem areas for proliferation of microplastics in the marine environment in Scotland. The Clyde and the head of Loch Long in particular are one of the worst areas, and that's where these fish are going to be swimming. And it's recently recently they've proven that fish who are swimming in it where there are microplastics, the microplastics don't just pass through the guts of the fish; they actually do. They end up in the flesh. So when you see a fillet of salmon on your plate, that fillet of salmon will contain microplastics. So you will be eating microplastics when you're eating farmed salmon. The precautionary principle is an international legal condition which essentially is embedded in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and what it basically says is that where there are threats of serious or irreversible damage, lack of full scientific certainty shall not be used as a reason for postponing cost-effective measures to prevent environmental degradation. So what that basically means is that if there is any doubt that a particular project may have negative environmental consequences, if there is doubt, then it should not go ahead, and that principle should be applied in this case, in my opinion. Profit, well, obviously the company is seeking to make profit. These companies are not Scottish, they're not Scottish owned. The profits don't stay in Scotland, of course. The profits of the Scottish salmon industry are primarily the industry is owned by Scandinavian companies. This particular company is an Irish interest as well, and they're seeking to make profits, obviously, for their shareholders, and they're telling us that this semi-closed approach is the way to go. Now, other countries around the world and regions within other countries are obviously also looking at how can they improve salmon farming and move away from open-necked salmon farming, and in some cases they are skipping this semi-closed stage altogether together and forcing the industry to move straight to fully land-based fish farming, which obviously has a much less risk of harming the marine environment. And there's an example here which I just wanted to show to you of a fully land-based fish farm that's recently opened in Florida. Remember, the United States is one of our very largest, I think it is our largest export market for Scottish salmon. And this one plant in Florida is ramping up now, and it will, when it's at its phase 3 full ramp up, it will be producing as much salmon as the entire 200 farms, the entire Scottish industry will be dwarfed by this one farm in Florida. Now, what does that mean for the future of Scottish salmon? Well, I think it really tells us that we should be pushing the industry in Scotland to be taking a longer term view and to be looking at a longer term, more sustainable, more ecologically sound land-based approach to salmon farming, rather than this semi-closed or open net fish farming, which has significant environmental concerns. So that's all I wanted to say. My sources, most of my sources are on this slide. Please feel free to take a look at them, or let me know if if I can provide any more information on any of the points. Feel free to contact me. The email address is secretary@gairlochhead.info. Thank you very much for listening.